You know, one of these loops, Yuri's going to eventually have to realize that if you have some random girl suddenly becomes extremely clingy on you and super flirtatious, they're always going to be the Gnosia. It's always going to be the bad guy. The Gnosia know how men work. They know how to win over men, and it's by being super clingy and flirty. It immediately grabs them, and it's working every single time for him. I didn't want it to be. In the first loop, I really didn't want it to be Stella. I was like, that's too easy, right? I kind of had my own predictions on who was actually going to be in the first one. I didn't call it. The second one I called, but yes, very good episode, episode 3 of Gnosia. I like this. Once again, every single loop, they are sort of changing something. They're evolving the formula, throwing in the fact there's 2 Gnosia, having more people, and then yes, seemingly completely flipping the script. At the end of the episode, we see that they succeed. They won. But then he still goes back, which makes me wonder, did he still die? Was there an explosion? He just didn't notice it? It was warping, so it implies that he was just sent back. He didn't die. He was sent back immediately, which opens the door to the idea that this isn't about the Gnosia. This isn't about finding the Gnosia alone because they succeeded in that. The question mark is, what is that? Is it that no matter what, you're always going to reset at this point, even if you win or lose? It's not about finding Gnosia? That's not like the equation to stop this process? That it's something else? Or is it about finding the Gno? Could eventually get back so far that we'll get to that point of that conflict and he'll have to stop the Gno initially, and that's going to be the thing that saves everything. I think I'm more leaning on the idea that this is going to be an aspect of he's stuck in a loop, and it doesn't matter what the equation outside of it is, you're in this loop, and you have to get rid of this loop. Which makes me almost wonder if he has to figure out how to either destroy it, this cube that he got, or is it going to be a thing where he has to pass it on to somebody else? That's kind of twisted there, because that implies that he has to put somebody else in an infinite loop, or maybe possibly the Gnosia. I don't know, give it the Gnosia or something like that. Anyways, let's get the episode proper, opening up with the first scenario, which is, yes, the appearance of 7 individuals and, again, 2 Gnosia. Now, initially with that first meeting, yeah, I think my suspicion was more kind of leaning towards, I didn't want it to be Stella, but as the sequence went on, I eventually came to the conclusion that it was going to be Stella and Shigemichi. Now, why I say that is because, yes, initially it's a lot of Stella being very clingy upon him, but as it went on, you eventually have this scene where he goes with Shigemichi, or he's at the cafe or the cafeteria with Shigemichi, and Shigemichi afterwards says, we have to stop by Stella's first, because she really likes you, and you cut in line. I was supposed to be one to save her, but no, you saved her instead. And so now she really likes you. And they went by and seen her. And I was like, this makes sense that this would be the 2 Gnosia, because it seems like Shigemichi is purposely trying to push Yuri to Stella. And if Stella is going to be one of the Gnosia, it would make sense that if Shigemichi is one as well, he'd want Yuri to kind of get into their little clique. Yeah, she likes you. Go see her. Not that he actually likes Stella. He's just kind of trying to egg Yuri on by saying, you got something great that I want, so you should appreciate it. So that's why I was like immediately going, it's going to be the 2 of them. That's where I kind of see this going. But no, the interesting thing in this first loop is that, yes, initially off the bat, Rashio is trying to, once again, control the situation. But it seemed like Yuri didn't want that. He realizes that Rashio seems like he's not going to possibly be the Gnosia, and so he wants to kind of sway it away from what it usually goes. The direction that this usually goes into for Rashio is that he takes control, and Yuri knows full well that puts suspicion on the person taking control. And so he's trying to get away from that, which fails, because even though Yuri does step up for once in the initial moments, even with Setsu trying to defend him once again about the amnesia, even though Yuri does step forward and say, no, look, I got this information from the instant learning thing. I'm perfectly fine. I know, Rashio, you're definitely trying to help people out. That doesn't bring suspicion upon me. Even though he says that, Rashio still goes, yeah, you definitely going to be the Gnosia. We're totally going to freeze you. And he gets frozen. He gets frozen instead. But no, this is interesting because, again, my thought process is like, I don't think it's going to be Stella, but it's probably Stella. But I think right here with the cold sleep scene, I went back to SQ. Why is that? Because SQ did something in this loop that she did in the loop that she was the Gnosia. What did SQ do? The moment that Rashio was selected, she pushed him in, pressed the button. And she did the same thing with this one. I'm like, it's going to be SQ, isn't it? Because she's acting like SQ did when she was Gnosia. Now, granted, this is a situation where Rashio himself is frozen and not killed, and so it is sort of our first time kind of seeing this again, I believe. So that could be it. That's just she just doesn't like Rashio. That makes sense because she's very easygoing, whereas Rashio's is very kind of, again, uppity and whatnot. But no, it was interesting to see that Shigemichi is not like a stereotypical sci-fi alien in the idea that they look like a typical sci-fi alien. He's actually human. It's just that he had some accident and his skin was artificially replaced. So it's like a costume, but it's not a costume. It's his actual skin. He just got himself to look like a sci-fi generic alien, which is really weird. Be after Rashio gets frozen, he chills with Shigemichi for a little bit. Again, goes to see Stella, and again, super sus there. But this is the point which I pretty much put that prediction. It's going to be Shigemichi and Stella. Now, again, I still had the idea that might be SQ as well, or one of those would be SQ because of what she did with Rashio. But yes, once the warp happens, Setsu dies, which I think that's the first time she's ever died outside of freezing. But it puts Yuri in a position of, okay, if we weren't right with Rashio, it makes sense that if there is still 2 people left, which that's dumb as heck, by the way, the fact that the AI can tell how many Gnosia are in there, can detect when the Gnosia are all either gone or frozen, but it can't tell when one of them gets frozen. It can tell there's 2, and it can tell when they're all frozen, and it could tell when there was only 1, but it could never tell if one gets frozen. Again, I'm going back to the AI is sus. That ship, this is all going to be some simulation. Then the ship is doing some weird test because, again, typically they're supposed to blow up when there's a Gnosia inside, or a Gno. But it's not. It's holding off to do some weird little experiment with them. Levy is sus. Levy is sus. Again, how it cannot tell that one is frozen is dumb. But anyways, this is where Yuri's in a conflict because there's still 2 left, possibly. And if they fail the next meeting, that means they're going to be 2 humans and 2 Gnosia, which he predicts means that if they fail, the 2 Gnosia will be essentially equal to the humans and kill them. I'm guessing unless they're equal or less amount of humans, they can't attack. But no, Yuri decides to try out the thing that happened with Gina. And the idea that when he asked Gina if she was human, she said that she was human, and a thump happened. This sucks because I didn't want to believe it was going to be this easy. And there might be still a quirk to this, which I'll get into in a minute. I didn't want it to be this easy, that all he has to do is ask people if they're humans and he'll know. And thus, all he really has to do is get each person side by side and say, hey, are you human? Are you human? And then once he figures out who the Gnosia is, then plot out how he's going to essentially get people to fumble up and people to suspect them. Because he can't come out and say, hey, I checked everybody and that one. Because that puts a big bullseye on you. But no, he goes through and he asks each one of them. And very quickly, SQ's like, yep, human. Shigemichi, yep, human. And then Stella speaks up and says, why would you ask that? Because they can lie. And he kind of pushes on him like the personality of the Gnosia is still forefront or whatever. I'm not sure exactly what he's saying there, but they're taking the form of them, but they're still essentially Gnosia inside there or whatever. So you can still tell if they're lying. I didn't catch this when I was watching the episode until after everything happened. It just dawned on me afterwards. Oh, Stella never said that she was human. Every single person spoke up. SQ did immediately. Shigemichi said immediately. Stella said, I will agree to that. Didn't say, I am human specifically. Never said ningen, like Japanese. Didn't say that. And then he goes and looks at Gina, and Gina says human, thump. And so he immediately thinks, at least Gina, and hoping that Rashio was the other one, and then they'll survive. At least trying to take down one of them. But in the end, for some reason, everybody turns on Shigemichi. I'm not sure why Shigemichi ended up getting voted. I don't recall him really doing anything during this whole sequence that would put blame upon him, but for some reason, everybody voted him and not Gina. So in the end, with this one, yeah, I assumed it was going to be Shigemichi and Gina. And then with Shigemichi being frozen, I thought it was going to have to continue on until it was one-on-one. But it turned out to be Gina and Stella, thus confirming maybe that the whole thump thing is actually true with Gina. And again, with my predictions on Stella, she's too clingy, and then add on the fact that she never said that she was human. I still don't think that Yuri has the ability to tell a lie when it comes to being asked if they're human. My prediction around Gina is that she's not going to be human, but she's also not Gnosia. That's what I think that the thump's going to be. When he asks her, are you human? She's technically lying, but she's not Gnosia. Because I think what's going to happen again is he's going to ask her again the next time, and she's going to still thump, and he's going to immediately jump on her, and it's not going to be it. She's not going to be Gnosia. That's my prediction there. I just think the idea of him being able to ask people and get it is a little bit too easy. But yeah, she's like, I'm going to make you some tea. It's going to make you feel real good. SQ's in the background going, oh no, crap, damn it. Freaking Gina going after her. She's like, crap, get away from me. Poor SQ. But yes, that's when we start the next loop, and we get another added little mechanic, and it's the engineer credentials. Apparently, again, this AI Levy doing its little game with everybody has added a new little mechanic, and it's called engineering that everybody seems to know about. Again, this is all going to be a game. This is all going to be a simulation of some sort. But yes, apparently the engineer has the ability that whenever they go to warp, they can select one person to essentially check them out, and after the warp, they'll get information on them, if they are Gnosia or a human, 100%. And so this turns into a big little spout between them. Hey, Yuri, are you the engineer? And then Rashio's like, nope, he can't be the engineer because I'm the engineer. I'm like, yeah, it's Rashio. It's Rashio. Immediately Rashio. And then, as they're kind of debating on who's the actual engineer, because Yuri brings up that he's the engineer in the stupidest way, which, by the way, facepalm moment. I'm like, Yuri, you should have probably stood up and said, you're lying because, nope, I'm the engineer. No, instead, Yuri says, no, I'm the engineer. And I guess that's a good thing because, again, taking control or suspecting other people puts the bullseye on you, and that's probably why Yuri did it that way. But the moment that he asks Shigemichi what his opinion was, and he immediately said, I trust you, bro, I follow my gut. Shigemichi. I knew it immediately. I knew the direction it was probably going to go was the idea that Yuri was going to assume, oh, it can't be Shigemichi because he would have to support the Gnosia, which he knows Rashio is. He ends up getting to that later on, but he also adds his own little thing there, which is proof. So, like, unlike me, where it's going to be gut reaction there, props to Yuri for actually looking for some sort of proof to present to people. Choosing him so loosely there makes him Gnosia. But yeah, Yuri masterfully baits Rashio into taking control once again, which, like usual, gets him voted out. I like how he literally plays into what gets Rashio in trouble every single time. Every time he takes control, people vote him out. Let me make him take control. He took the bait. Get him out of there. Which just gets into the whole engineering thing. He goes in there, he goes to pick his thing. They do the warp, Gina ends up dying, and then Yuri presents to everybody that he picked somebody, and it ended up being Shigemichi. That Shigemichi, 100%, is the Gnosia. Now, I was like, okay, how is this going to pull it off? Because, again, I didn't think they were actually going to still loop even if he won. And I'm like, we're only on the 3rd episode. There's no way it's going to be Shigemichi because we have to loop again. And it ends up actually being true. But again, I like this because what Yuri does is go, okay, I know it's Shigemichi, and you can claim that, yes, I'm lying, so I have to have some other proof. Here's the other proof. You claim that you were supporting me, but no, you voted for me. You voted for me on that time. Now, here's the oddity, because I never knew they could actually check the results. And I went back and I'm like, no, even during the voting process, it doesn't show who voted for who. So how does he know that Shigemichi voted for him? And it seems like, yes, everybody apparently, after the vote process happens, can check the system to find out who voted for who, which is kind of sus, which is kind of odd that they never brought that up before, because you would think that would make certain people very nasty to other individuals based on the voting. I thought that it might have been an engineer-only thing, but again, it showed Shigemichi looking at the screen, and it showed, yes, this person voted for me, so I voted them out. Shigemichi knew that Yuri was the engineer, but he chose to kill Gina because she voted for him. So that changes things quite a bit there. But anyways, Shigemichi goes to get frozen, and sure enough, the light turns green, and everybody's celebrating, and I'm like, wait, hold on, what's the episode count for the show? Everybody's celebrating. He goes to talk to Setsu, and bloop, and he goes back in time again. How far back is going to be the massive question mark? Because yes, we once again meet a new person. He's going up the elevator. Some chick pushes him down, says, go and be frozen, Yuri. He's meeting once again a new person, but Setsu wasn't there to greet him when he woke up. Now, she's not always there to greet him when he wakes up, but he's also never really ever alone, at least up until the point of getting to the meeting. Or at least it hasn't shown. It's shown where it jumped from that scene to the meeting, but he's typically running into people on the way there. So very, very odd there. It makes me kind of wonder if this might possibly go to my original theory from episode 1 that we might end up going back in time more and more and more again. But at the same time, it also implied in this episode that this is the first meetings. I thought initially that they had previously done meetings and voted people out, and then Yuri got woke up by Setsu. But the number that's up on the counter is the first meeting. I don't know. Very interesting either way. Really like this, again, slowly evolving the formula of these meetings and what is actually is needed. And again, at the end here, sort of throwing this massive question mark out there that I talked about at the very beginning. What is Yuri here for? Or better question, what was Setsu here for? I think that's the better question mark, is what was Setsu here for? And why does Setsu have that cube? And what is the end goal with the cube? Is it to find the Gnosia, or is it just simply pass the cube off to somebody else? This ability seems to be creating a very long journey that he's not able to get out of simply by fulfilling something that he initially thought it was, which makes me kind of wish that Setsu was a little more clear on exactly what that is. You have to find the Gnosia. Nope, she didn't say that. But anyways, very interesting and looking forward to more. But that's my thoughts on episode 3 of Gnosia. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, if you did, hit the like button down below. If you like this content and you want to support the channel more, become a member of the channel. Until next time, take care.